My name is Anna. Did I discover a secret in my family home? I grew up in this house since childhood. The attic had old boxes and dust. My sibling Mark lived close by for years. He seemed kind and calm. I never thought he could betray me. One afternoon I found a small letter under an heirloom. The letter had the word will. My hands shook as I read it. I felt a sudden fear and confusion. I needed answers about inheritance and the truth. I thought of our parents and their divorce years ago. We had no reunion after that hard time. Why did Mark hide this paper? He saw me and smiled, however his smile felt empty. I knew something changed. I had to learn the whole story. My name is Anna and I live in our family home now. The house is full of small things from childhood. I keep a wooden heirloom on the shelf. It came from my grandmother. The attic is above my room. I go there on a rainy day. I open a box and find an old envelope. The envelope has our father's name. Inside is a letter and a folded paper. The paper is the will. My heart hits my chest. I sit down on the wooden floor. I read the will with quiet eyes. The will shows a name I do not expect. It names Mark as the main heir. I feel a strange mix of joy and fear. Mark was always gentle with me. He helped with shopping and small chores. He smiled at our memories. Still, something in his past is hidden. I looked at the letter again. I feel a little pain in my chest. I think of our parents. They had a hard divorce long ago. My mother left and took the children to another town. Mark stayed and cared for the house sometimes. We had few visits and no big reunion. Now the will returns. I wonder about custody and old fights. I knock on Mark's door and call his name. He comes down with a cup of tea. He looks tired but calm. I say, "Mark, I found Father's will." He drinks the tea slowly. He does not show surprise. He says, "It is old. It is only paper." His voice is soft. I ask, "Why is your name in the will?" He looks away and breathes. He says, "I was close to him in his last days. I want more." I say, "Please tell me the truth." He nods and leaves the room. I feel small and alone. The house feels different now. A shadow walks in my mind. I do not know if I can trust him. I need to find more proof. I remember the attic box keys. I find a small key under the bookshelf. The key might open one more box. I hold it tight. I feel both hope and fear. I am not ready for what I will find next. I use the small key on a locked wooden box. The lock opens with a soft click. Inside are photographs and a thin note. The photographs show my father with two people. One picture shows my father and Mark alone. They smile at a small table. Another photo shows a closed envelope on the kitchen table. I hold the thin note and read short words. It says my father wanted Mark to have the house. I feel a mix of relief and doubt. I call my mother on the phone. She lives far away now. She answers with a tired voice. I ask about the will and the reunion after the divorce. She says, your father was lonely. He talked to Mark a lot. I ask, did he change his will? She says, he wrote another paper in his last week. I say, why did he choose Mark? She says, maybe Mark was there. Maybe he needed help. I think of custody when we were small. I think of wealth and small fights after the divorce. I remember an old fight about an heirloom. Mark once said, we must keep family things safe. He seemed kind then. Now his words sound different. I decide to go to the town hall. I want to see the official will. The clerk is a quiet man. He finds the record and reads slowly. The official will shows changes and a witness name. Mark's name is on the will and his signature is near. I feel my stomach drop. I also see a second note from my father. It says, I forgive him for his past. I do not know what this past is. I ask the clerk about the witness. The clerk says the witness moved away. I take a deep breath. I drive home and watch Mark talk on the phone. He laughs in a small voice. He hears me at the door and hides the phone. Later, in the kitchen, he says, I did what I must do for the house. I ask, what do you mean? He avoids my eyes. He says, I made hard choices. I feel uneasy. I think of betrayal and secrets. I remember a childhood argument about money. I feel the house closing around me. I walk to the attic again. The attic light feels colder. On a box I find a paper with numbers and names. It shows debts and old calls. I understand a part of the truth. There were bills and calls for help. Mark faced pressure and fear. I want to help him, but I also want truth. I wait for him to explain, and he comes to the attic with a cold face. His smile falls like a mask. He says, I have no time for your questions. I feel hurt and shocked. Mark and I sit at the old kitchen table. The lamp makes a warm circle on the wood. I look at him and say, tell me the truth now. He breathes slow and hard. He starts to speak in a quiet tone. He tells me about his fear and debt. He had to help a friend and pay old bills. He says, I never wanted to hurt you. I listen and hold my hands together. He tells me about a man who called for money. He says he signed papers to stop more calls. I ask, were you in danger? He says, yes. I was afraid for our home. He looks tired and small. I want to help him then. I say, we can talk to the bank. We can ask for help. He looks at me and smiles, a small sad smile. For a moment I feel love and relief. Then he stands up fast. His face goes cold. He says, you do not understand, Anna. I did what I must for us. His voice shakes. I ask, what do you mean? He says, I made a deal. I got a loan and a man helped. I gave him papers and gifts. I feel a hit inside. He says, now he asks more. He says I must bring the heirloom and sign away the house. The room spins for a second. I say, we will find a way. We can call the lawyer. He laughs without joy. He says, the lawyer is expensive. The man will hurt us if we do not give him what he wants. I feel my throat close. I ask, why did you hide this from me? Why did you sign the new will? He does not answer. He walks to the window and looks out at the small garden. He says, I wanted to keep the house for you. I thought I was saving you. I thought this was the only way. I feel a mix of anger and sorrow. He smiles like a man who has lost his road. I touch his hand. It feels cold and used. Outside I hear a car stop. A tall stranger knocks on the door. Mark freezes. He looks at me with dark eyes. I step forward and open the door. The stranger shows a paper with a name and a stamp. He says, we need the heirloom tonight. My legs go weak. Mark turns and says, I will bring it. He moves fast and grabs a small box. I ask, where are you going? He does not say. He runs out and slams the door. I run after him into the street. The neighbor watches with a worried face. I call, Mark, wait. He turns and looks at me. His face is different. He is not my gentle brother now. He is a man who makes a dark choice. The street light throws a long shadow. I stand alone and cold. I realize my brother is changing into someone else. I feel betrayed and afraid. The night closes around our old house. I stayed by the door and watched him go. I felt a heavy sadness but also a clear thought. I called my mother and the police right after. The neighbor saw the stranger's car number. The police came and asked many questions. They found Mark later at a small shop. He sat with the man who asked for the heirloom. Mark had the small box. He looked broken and quiet. The officers talked and took notes. Mark did not speak much. He had done wrong things to protect the house. He had turned from a kind man into someone who made bad choices. I felt pain, but I also felt hope. The officer said we could keep the house safe. My mother came home for a short reunion. She hugged me and cried. She also spoke quietly to Mark about help and the will. In court, the judge listened and asked about the will and the debts. Mark told the truth. He said he was afraid and he lied. He said he was sorry. The judge gave a chance for help. Mark had to go to a program and say sorry. The house stayed with me and my mother. We kept the heirloom safe in the attic again. I learned a strong lesson. People can change under fear and debt. A good person can do a bad thing. We can seek help before we break. I also learned to ask questions and not hide papers. For you, the lesson is clear. Speak about secrets, ask for help, and protect what matters. Practice the new words from our house story. You can learn English with feelings and truth.